Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds, and with me today is one of the most sought-after extreme sports photographers, Mr. Justin Cosman. Justin, how are you today?
Doing great, Craig. It's good to see you.
It is great to see you as well, and I have to say, you growing up in the western part of Illinois, I didn't see you enough when I was younger, that is for sure. So let's start there. You grew up racing BMX bikes. You have won a few state titles. You also, from what I read, you branched out and you wrestled and you swam, went to college for writing. And at some point along the way, you picked up a camera and became this fantastic photographer. And I would love to start in that area. How did you get into bikes?
Bikes. So my best friend growing up got a BMX bike. And I was like, oh shit, I need one of those.
That's right.
I need something that's just like a monster truck for a kid. That's what it looked like to me. And before he got a bike, he brought an issue of BMX Plus to school. And we were just like, holy shit, it was like, just how I look at Porsches and like, cars now. Back then it was just like, oh my God, it's just, you'd never seen stuff like that before. And then you realize you've got a bike shop in town you've never been to. And,
right.
They're carrying like Schwinn Predators and stuff. And it's just all this, it was just very overwhelming. And you just connected with it. Cause I grew up in a pretty small town, about 4,000 people at the time, farm town. And there wasn't like a whole lot going on besides stick and ball sports, which was totally fun and totally cool. Yeah. And then that BMX bike was just like, whoa. And then once you kind of start to, it's just like when you start looking for a new car to buy, you start to see that car everywhere. Well, once I started to like, bikes started to kind of like take over my interest, I just started seeing bikes everywhere. You start to see the older kids riding BMX bikes, and you start to notice there's like, oh, there's a difference in people's bikes, and that kid's got a dope bike, and you just right. he must have something cool about him. I want to hang out with him. And so yeah, that was maybe, I think we were in like sixth grade when we got BMX bikes. It was like 90, 91, 92. He got a GT Mach 1, and then I got a GT Interceptor, and and then we just started like building jumps and stuff. And so kind of, I mean, that's kind of when BMX started, but there's a really interesting prequel to that.
Yeah, go. I love it. Let's do it.
So like,
because that story is very similar across the board. A friend had a bike. We found the jumps. We built our own jumps.
Yeah.
Like the love of it takes over before you can do any of the other stuff, which is really, really cool about the whole thing. Like, it's almost like the bike influences you, right? And there's this creative aspect of it that I never thought about until someone mentioned it to me. Like, think about how creative bikes are. And I'm like, I just pedaled really fast. They're like, no, not really. And I'm like, God, you know what? You're right. That is kind of an outlet for some people.
Yeah.
And obviously you're wildly creative, so it would make sense.
Yeah. So that in and of itself sort of was like my first kind of creative outlet. But let's rewind a little bit.
Yes, so, I love it. This is where it goes. This is where it gets good.
I'm a lot younger. I'm like second grade, and both my parents work. And so we kind of went through, we had like this group of like babysitters, like, 8 or 9 babysitters that would kind of rotate in. And most of them were just like local, girls that my parents knew through friends at our church. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So my first guy babysitter, his name is Matt Smith. He shows up in like shorts, cargo shorts, Doc Martens, or like the Airwalks with like the Velcro over the shoelaces, spiked up hair, like Dead Kennedy shirt. He's from my church. So, and my mom is just like, knows his mom, and he's maybe like, like 5 years older than me. And I'm just like, whoa, he's got a skateboard. He brings it, to our house, and he's just like reading skateboard magazines and stuff. And eventually, and so I was like a lot younger. And all he wanted to do is skateboard. So he asked my dad, he's like, can I build a skateboard ramp in your garage so when I come over to babysit, I can skateboard?
What?
Yeah, right. And then eventually he started convincing my parents to let them drop us off at his house to be babysat so he could skate his mini ramp, which was in his backyard. Then he convinced them to let him take us to Rampage,
Yeah,
the
no
bowling
way.
alley Rampage
No way.
in Iowa. Okay. So first of all, a skate park in the middle of Iowa, like chances of that are extremely low. And you
Mhm.
know who owns it and everything, right? But
Right. I did an interview with him. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm just seeing all these guys skateboard, and then all of a sudden there's these older guys, Rick and Kurt, that come out and they're riding bikes that were just completely raw. So they were like, the first probably standard shorties.
Right.
They're hitting the wall ride. They're going up past the kind of like drop fluorescent lights, hitting the box jump. They've got mullets, no shirts on. And I was like, whoa, and I'm like sitting on this like old red carpet with like gum stuck to it. It was an old bowling alley.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just sitting there because I couldn't really skate the ramps. I could kind of do like a turn on some of the things, but there were so many older kids that, just kind of getting them in the way. So it was more just like hanging out, looking at stuff, listening to like really dark, heavy metal, but I saw these, I saw Rick and Kurt, and then it really didn't click until like the BMX bikes with my friend kind of came about. But that was like a memory I had that like oddly didn't inspire me very much, but it like got me really kind of in touch with that culture that was so far away from anything I'd ever experienced. It didn't scare me, but it didn't like pull me in or anything. But it's funny how like it would come full circle. And I never got to actually ride my BMX bike there because eventually it closed, and then they opened a new location by the dog food place. But yeah, isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
Yeah.
So on some level you were influenced by it, right? Because you saw how awesome the dude was that came to babysit you, and then he brought you somewhere else and was like, look at this world that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Right. And then of course Rick comes out and Kurt, and they're shredding, and you're like, what? I don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
it was like
cool.
seeing a freestyle motocross. To me, that was kind of like what it was like. It was just like, what are these guys doing? And I looked at their bikes, and I was just like, I remember thinking like, did they make their bikes? Because they didn't have stickers, they didn't have a paint job. They kind of had like all the weld burns on it. And I just didn't like really understand, and that would have been kind of like when they were leaving Haro and had just kind of started standard. And I don't, that was so cool to have that story, and it have had been there, and then see photos, and then later like see Roger's Garage, that video, which had like footage of that rampage. And I remember some of the ramps, like they had this four-way ramp, and it had like a grind ledge in the middle. And I remember drawing that in class because it was like, so you could kind of like hit it a bunch of different ways. And it was just like, something that, I would see in like, oh, that would be, something I'd see in the Ninja Turtle movie with the skateboards. And just, you just have this weird mix of like pop culture, like action sports influence, and then like something that's so raw, like Rampage back then, that it was like, man, I don't know what was going on, but it was cool to be around it and kind of see it. Man, and oh man, I wish I could have ridden that place. Honestly, that's really what it boils down to.
Have you ever talked to Rick about that? Have you ever told him that story?
No, I don't think I've ever told him that story. No,
awesome.
I think
He's going to hear it now though, because he listens to these all the time. It's going to be awesome for him to hear that. That is so cool.
I bet I told Ron Anderson at one point.
Right.
Yeah, but thank God. My parents let me do so much stuff that looking back, I'm like, why'd you let me do that?
Well, it was a different world back then, man. We used to be, I would wake up, go ride my bike down to this place called Money Trails, where I first met Jack McDaniel, and I'm there all day. Like, that was my spot, and that's the place that I rode my entire career. Nowadays, there's no way I'm letting my 10-year-old kid roll down to the trails without at least coming back and checking in. Like, it's a different world. That's why. I mean, I think there was a level of trust back then, and there wasn't social media for people to read stuff and go, wait a minute, how
Yeah.
crazy is this? Let's go do it too. It's a different program, which is awesome that we were able to experience so much other stuff without the handcuffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a little freer then for sure. So you've got a bike now. So you're racing, and you're racing the state series. Did
Yeah.
you race? Was it the Moline track that you raced at?
Yeah. The Green Valley
Yes.
track first, and then Moline. Yeah, its current location now. Because the first one was kind of closer to the river and it would flood a lot. And
Oh, yikes.
I think that is actually where, so when it was sort of redone by Paul in 92, 93, it had been at that location before, I think a lot earlier, like maybe in the mid 80s. I think he said that the track was actually at that location before where he had raced it, maybe. Because he's like Paul, the track director.
Yeah, he's been the track director at East Moline for forever. Killer guitar player as well. Did he play the national anthem on his guitar every time as well? Because he's ridiculous.
I think he's got a recording that he really likes that he'll play, but
yes,
I think he's, I don't put it past him, just plug in and freestyle it.
Why not? I would if I could.
He took me to my first concert, so he worked at
Get out of here.
Yeah. He took me to Pantera. We got free tickets. It was in the winter. And he got backstage passes and wouldn't let us go. So he took us to the car, made us sit in the car, my brother and I. We froze our ass off while he was like backstage. And I wore my like S&M mesh jersey that I got for Christmas. Anyway, side note, yeah.
That is so awesome. Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. Yeah.
Holy shit, dude.
Very memorable. So it was at like a venue where they had hockey games, and so they would put layers of like this, like almost maybe it was like plywood over the ice rink.
Yep.
Well, I was like sitting up in the stands, and then all of a sudden I see like these 4x8 sheets of plywood just start to get crowd surfed out. So the mosh pit is taking the floor off so they can run and slide into each other so it was Biohazard that opened for Pantera. Like Biohazard's like one of my favorite bands still to this day, but so that isn't that funny?
That is crazy as hell. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Holy shit. So you get to go see Pantera because of your background with BMX bikes.
Yeah. And they played Pantera all the time at Rampage too, and we ended up going.
They played it at Scrap It all the time, all day. Pantera played, which was great. It was perfect, right?
Yeah. But so we had BMX bikes in town, and I met some of the guys that were like a little bit younger than Paul, and they were riding like Skyway teardrop frames. So they were riding like kind of older frames. And I remember they had like bent forks, and I was like, I think your forks are bent. And they're like, you don't know shit. And I'm like, your bike's had a 17-inch top too, like, so you just start like all these kind of different generations are kind of, coming together at the trails. There were the jumps down by the creek called the Moose, and Paul used to ride there, and we'd like start building there, and and just meeting people, and someone would roll up on like some brand new bike, and you'd get all stoked on their cranks, and
right.
But it just kind of became just kind of took over just my whole life. My friend Ryan and I, all we want to do is go ride and race, and like I was still wrestling, and I still like was swimming a lot, but like as far as like a culture that I really latched onto, like magazines and props videos, like that was all I wanted to do, is read magazines and watch videos.
Right. Yeah. And you started making videos, from what I read. You made a video from a long time ago when you were really young. It was like you're the first one that you made.
The Brosman video?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So my mom worked at a hospital, but she had like a side gig making custom like tutus for ballerinas, because her best friend ran like a ballet company. And so she would make, she would like tailor and then also like custom make. She had a bunch of sewing machines and shit. And so
the creativity started with your mom, dude.
Yeah.
Like, see what I mean? You start talking about stuff and you're like, wait a minute. It's ingrained, dude. You can't even help it. You can't help it.
Yeah, so I would get down there and I'd make BMX pads. I'd get Velcro and like make pads for my
So
bike,
cool.
and that was like my first business. So my friend who had the BMX bike, Ryan, he had the Mach 1. He made the number plates, and I made the pad sets, and then we
Wow.
sold them at Paul's shop. And I remember I made a set for LaJuan Cunningham
Oh yes,
when
dude.
he
Awesome.
came to do a clinic, and I was like, I made you some Green Bay Packer pads for your bike, and then I made Rick a pair. But yeah, that was kind of like my first entrepreneurial venture, I guess.
Yep.
And yeah, and it taught me a little bit of hard work because I'd like just be sewing really late at night, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, I don't know how we got on that topic, but
Dude,
we
that's
were gonna
awesome.
make a video for that company. It's just like we're gonna make, yeah, the sizzle video, and yeah, just camcorder at the trails, VCR to VCR editing, and
Yep.
yeah, that was fun. And then I really didn't touch video until maybe like 10 years ago, after my photography career was like, really established, and I
Right.
started to get into video. But I loved it. It's actually like kind of funny that I didn't gravitate more towards that, because the barrier was so much lower, because I could have just been filming all my friends all the time. And then
Right.
eventually I started bringing a photo camera to the trails. I don't know if you read it in one of those things I sent you, but I collected Marlboro miles from like all the garbage cans in town.
No, really, no.
Yeah, that was how I got my first camera.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so I would.
What was it about? What was it about a camera, a still camera, that you were attracted to? Because if you're starting out with video, you're watching props, and props is, that was next level before there was a level. But then you get a still camera.
I don't know. I think you could hold it, and you could hold that moment, I guess, and that was it was a simpler way to kind of like show people kind of what you did.
Sure.
I mean, now you can just show it on your phone. Right? And I think I would have grown up now, maybe video would have been what I started and stayed in. But I think back then, yeah, just having a still photo, even how terrible it was, it was
Yep.
kind of like just what you did back then, in the 90s. You just had,
Right.
you had photos and you get developed. And, but yeah, I like one of the gas stations in town near our junior high, where we would get like candy. They had like all the Marlboro catalogs, all the
Right.
shit you can buy, like steak knives and backpacks and all this stuff. And there was a camera in there. It was like a white and red Canon camera, and it was like waterproof. It really wasn't waterproof.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah. It's waterproof, but don't get it wet.
yeah. So I just saved up a bunch. I would just like see them all over just in the garbage on the street, and I just tear off the little UPC thing and save it. And then I ended up like buying a bunch from this guy that rode. His older brother just had these jars full of them. I was like, I'll give you like $20 for that whole thing. Yeah. And then so I bought a camera, and then I had a camera, and about that time I was in junior high. And so I was on the yearbook club thing, and I had all this like free film.
Very cool.
The
Very cool.
Yeah, dude, this is kind of like what I think was sort of like the tipping point. So I get the camera.
Sure.
That's kind of like weird enough, the way I got that camera, because I didn't really have to pay retail for it, right? Had I had the money to buy what that would have cost, I would have spent it on my bike, because that's like what I would have done. I would have bought crank, like wheel set. So in junior high, the photo studio in town, they would give the junior high all their expired film to use, and then they would do all the processing for free. And so I just had all this free film, and I would just shoot stuff at school, and then I would shoot stuff at the trails, and it would just all get processed for free. So like my overhead was like nothing.
Holy shit.
There was like very little barrier for me to like just shoot a bunch,
Yes.
Yeah. And then I would just take the camera to races and the trails. And yeah, it was just like, I want to get a photo of that, and a lot of it was like, will you take a photo of me? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first camera. And then
Well, who taught you how to use it? Like, what was that like when you first got it? Did the teacher at school, were they the ones that explained the processing behind it, or was it something you just did on your own and you self-taught?
I didn't process any of the film. Still to this day I've never developed any film, which is kind of shameful, but it's just kind of what happened. And then the Canon camera, it was like an auto exposure camera, so I didn't really have
Cool.
to learn that. When I did use the school's camera, it was like a Pentax, like a K1 or something. So it was
Hmm.
manual, and you had to like, make sure the exposure meter was in the right spot, and
Right.
it was kind of like you had your cheat sheet. Like if it's action, make sure it's over 5/500th of a second, and
Right.
you know, later on in life you realize that's not really that fast. You can shoot a lot faster, but
Everyone's gotten faster, right? When we're
yeah,
young, it's like 500, it's frozen. Now everyone's
yeah,
like, I better put a light here to freeze everybody.
yeah.
Different
But
story.
that camera, I figured out how to shoot double exposures, which was like, it's like, oh, and I still like doing that to this day. Actually, when we go on vacation now, that's like all I'll shoot. I'll bring film and I will only shoot double exposures. For some reason, I just love doing that. We'll do
Really?
like, just like mountainscapes, tree line, double exposures, just like yeah, I love doing that. That's so much
That is
fun.
awesome. I've got an affinity for film, period. I love it. And it is the one thing that helps me to slow down to be a better photographer when I've got my digital camera. Because
Mhm.
you can't make a mistake. Otherwise, you're wasting film and that shit's expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's such a great way to train myself to really focus on what I'm trying to compose and what's going to be in the frame, and just slow down and take your time. For me, that's been a big factor
Yeah.
for sure. So you go to school,
Mhm.
and if please correct me if I'm wrong, but you went to school to be a writer.
Yep. So in high school, I was kind of in like I was in the yearbook club and then the school newspaper. And so they were like, you're going to write for a newspaper, you're going to write for a magazine. And I was like, okay, English was my best class. And I guess that's, what I'll do. And uh, yeah, so I went to school, study English, creative writing and journalism. And
And where did you go to school?
in Naperville at a little school called North Central,
Okay.
little D3 school. It was like a cross country track and field powerhouse, but
Wow.
actually got some grants to swim there. So
Very
school
cool.
was bad enough at swimming that they wanted me to swim there. That was fun. It was a lot of athletes, a lot of track and field kids would go there that were like D1 level, but they didn't
Yep.
want to deal with like all the D1 bullshit. So
Oh,
they would go there
right.
because they would just go there and like cherry pick and just win. Like it was like something crazy, like 30-time back-to-back conference championships and like 15-year back-to-back national titles. It was kind of cool to
Really?
see that. It was sort of like kind of like the Friday nights of track and field in Chicago. I don't know but it was,
Right.
that's kind of just what it was around. And so I wasn't a runner. I raced triathlons and stuff. So I tried to train with them a little bit, but
Sure.
it was just like, holy shit, these people are like real athletes. You know what I mean?
Right. People that
Um,
can run are gnarly. Well, swimmers too. Like once you've got that base, you can do anything.
yeah,
Like I wish I could swim. I'm
that
like a
was
brick.
swimming really helped me out for racing because it gave me such a super cardio base that I didn't bonk at the end of the races. Like I kind of just stayed the same. And then I was like so fresh for any of the mains. Everybody else was like just kind of tired and kind of losing their
Yep.
mechanics. And I was just like totally fine. Like wouldn't say I got faster, but it just kind of looked like that because, we would swim for like 2.5 hours. Like,
Right.
and yeah, so, but but yeah, when I started racing like some guys at Rockford, I realized that I was not a fast twitch guy.
And you talk about a track that needs a lot of fast twitch. The
Yeah,
smaller the hill, the more
yeah,
fast twitch you got to have. And that place, you got to be wide open in about 5 pedals.
Yeah.
or you're getting left behind, especially if you've got lane one there because the gate's crooked. I
Yes.
never could understand when he fixed the gate. Damn it! Like, I can't. Yeah. Anything outside of lane, if you were lane 5 or lane 4, even was like the last gate before you're a bike length back from when the gate falls.
Yeah.
At that place, you better be on the gate
It was
too.
so flat too. The gate was so flat. You
Yep,
remember
and
Brian Gunn?
fast.
You remember Brian
Yes,
Gunn?
yes.
My first experience, I'm at that gate and I'm like, it feels like I'm against a wall. It feels like I'm on flat ground against a wall. And
Yep.
then it's just like the first time I hear the ABA cadence. And then Brian Gunyon is like, Burr, he's like doing a power really back. I'm like,
Yes.
what is going on? And he's like gone. And like the gate's like, so
Yes.
racing going from MBL or at least the East Moline track to that Rockford track was just, I was just like, what is happening? And then Mike Gold was there too.
Right.
Like him and Alice Jung. And it was just like a totally different world to me.
It was pretty incredible, the difference, right, between the MBL people even and the ABA. Like it was a different group. There's no getting around it. It was a different vibe when you'd show up. It was different everything. Do you find that's pretty similar when you go do a shoot for when you're shooting stills versus a video?
Yeah, it is. It's those projects they're just so different. I mean, from the people that you bring and the way you approach things, like a lot of the still photography is very like it's the photographer doing so much more of everything. And with video productions, you have a crew and everybody is more kind of service minded. They have their roles and everybody's involved. And I think there's like a lot less kind of ego in the video production kind of side of things.
Sure.
Because it's so intricate and you really just can't do things without the help of other people, where like still photography, not only are people used to working alone a lot, but it's just a lot less involved, I think, in a lot of different ways. But
well, let's go back to school. And you're in there for creative writing and you're thinking you're going to be a writer. And obviously, go ahead. Keep going.
So
let's go.
I met my first, I'd say my second important mentor. So I'd say Paul DePau, track director, bike shop owner. He was kind of like my first BMX mentor. And we kind of skipped over a lot of stuff. He definitely taught me how to like train like for BMX racing. And he had kind of like a very Vision Quest, kind of old school 80s,
Carrying a log up the stairs.
Up the bleachers, we'd go up the hills, ride these hills at night and kind of do the, he had a saying like rust never sleeps, and it was like, so it's just like, you always got to be training. So, he was like, he didn't have to do that stuff and he didn't have to kind of take that role, but he did. And he's just kind of a teacher by nature because he taught guitar. And so he was really influential. So when I was at North Central College, I was at a track meet my freshman year, and I seen a guy, a photographer, and he's got like 3 camera bodies, and they have the Canon white lenses, the L series. And I was like, he's got the dope shit. He's got the 400, he's got the 70-200, and I was just like, hey man, I had like the school camera, and I was working for the newspaper, and I was like, oh, I'd really like to help you out, and he was working for my school. So he had like a contract with my school to shoot all their sports. And he had kind of a similar contract with a bunch of Division I schools in Chicago. And he worked for Sports Illustrated and ESPN, the magazine, like as a freelancer. Shoot tons of NFL, MLB, NHL hockey. And so he told me that he actually needed an assistant, and it really turned into an apprenticeship where that was the fall what was that? Was it the fall? Maybe it was a football game I saw him at. So it was the fall and we were going into winter and he needed help doing a bunch of stadium lighting, like indoor arena lighting for indoor sports for the winter. So we would go set up strobes in the catwalks and the rafters, and that's how we would shoot basketball. So we put up like 6 different flashes in the rafters, all connected to a pocket wizard, and that's how we would shoot the games. And he kind of showed me how to do all that stuff. It's just a lot of hauling equipment in and out. He lived near my college, which was cool. He'd pay me to come over and sort out slide film that he would get returned from the magazines. So that was like when I met him, he was still
Whoa.
shooting film and kind of transitioning to digital. So this was like 1999. He had 4 Nikon digital camera bodies, and he had 3 Canon digital bodies, the 1D. He had 5 fucking digital cameras, different. So because he was like a newspaper photographer, so he had all the Nikon glass, and he was like changing over to Canon. Like
Whoa.
he had so much shit, dude. And he
That's
would
crazy.
he would hire me to come over and like sort out film that was returned to him from like magazines or clients and like put it back in the file cabinets. And then he had so much gear that I could shoot at events. Like it wasn't just me like holding his lenses, like waiting to switch out. He was just like, no, go in the stands and like try to shoot a high angle. It's like, he would have me go shoot real low percentage shots that he needed
Right.
for, overviews or something, or maybe
Hmm.
like they had like a sponsor on one end of the field that he needed to get like photos with action near the sponsor dashboard.
Yep.
But he, what I'm saying, he can't just stand up there all game. So that's the kind of stuff I would do.
Right.
Yeah. So from Photoshop, he taught me Photoshop, how to adjust things in levels, how to kind of like select things. And he let me shoot all the time. He'd let me borrow his Canon lenses all the time. And he would give me garbage bags, dude, full garbage bags of film.
What?
I still have the film here. That's how much it is.
No way.
E200, Coda, some like Ektachrome, Provia, Velvia, dude. He would give me bricks and bricks and bricks of this stuff. And
What?
I just
Like you have like original Ektachrome sitting back there, not the stuff they've started to
yeah,
remake.
oh yeah, original stuff, yeah. And that's the stuff that
Holy.
I like take on vacations and do like double exposures with, and it's like all
Yeah.
washed out, and it's anyway. But yeah, that was like, how lucky was I at that time to not only have a guy that was so like he wanted to teach me so many things, but I also had access to so much of his gear and his personal just equipment. He gave me my first like remote flash, like a Vivitar 285
Really?
that I could use as like, a remote flash to shoot like BMX and stuff. And he had Lumidines. So he was shooting with Lumidines back in the day, which is kind of like what a lot of the guys like, it was like that would have been what the guys at Plus were using. They were probably using Q flashes or Lumidines because they're remote flashes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he taught me
So
all that stuff.
where's that guy now? What's his name and where is he now?
He's in Lyle. His name's Steve Woltman, and he still works for all those schools.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's actually been cool. He's like giving me some work out here. He's had me shoot some stuff in Florida for him. We've actually worked together, I guess, professionals in the last like, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. I've been able to give him some work in Chicago, some Red Bull stuff.
So cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
What a wonderful story on launching your career, because obviously I said in the beginning, outstanding photographer. When was it that you started to shoot exclusively BMX bikes? And I know you've transitioned into shooting other things, and we'll get to that too. Like outside of bikes. When was it when you started to go, I want to shoot all these riders now?
Yeah, so by the time I graduated, I was like, okay, if I want photography to be a career in a business. And I saw what Steve was doing with colleges and universities and working for their marketing departments. And I was like, okay, I want to do that, but I want to do that for bike companies and magazines. Mm-hmm. And I knew it wasn't going to happen in the Midwest. And so I had a degree, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to be West. And so my idea was I'm just going to move out there. And I was a little bit misguided because I thought like, okay, in the meantime, I know I'm not going to get work, so I need to have a job. So I was like, okay, I need to have a job like at a bike shop, because that's like one of the jobs I had. I figured I could just get a job as a mechanic somewhere. So I figured I could move to Oregon and get a job at a bike shop, because I knew there was like a big triathlon scene there for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had such limited knowledge, you know what I mean? I was like basing my decisions off of like, oh, I think there's like a couple pro triathletes that live in Oregon, so that must mean they have good bike shops. That's where I'll move. That was like all I was going on, right? So after
incredible.
After I graduated, I took a flight out there to just kind of like drive around and see, try to find these bike shops I didn't know existed or not. And I got a call about an internship that I had totally forgotten I had applied to down in Southern California. It was Bike Magazine, the mountain biking magazine.
Wow. Awesome.
And they were like, hey, are you still down to come out in a couple weeks? And it's like, oh, I'm in Oregon. And they're like, yeah, so we need you here in a couple weeks and it's unpaid. I was like, okay, yeah. So then I flew home and then drove out there and worked at Bike Magazine as a writer, as like an intern doing copywriting.
Wow.
During their photo issue, which is,
I don't miss that issue. I buy that issue every year.
Yeah.
So good.
So there was like there were no articles, right? Because it was just all photos, right?
Right.
So I got to see like all these photos come in and then do all these like selections from all the photographers all around the world. And I had very little work to do. So I was just like upstairs in the photo department, just like, nosing around. And and then I got to go to like Red Bull Rampage in that month, and I got to go to Interbike. And so that's like really when the bike industry was like, boom, I was in it. It was like, right. Okay, I see this as like its own little world. And at that time I was living in like Laguna Beach with a friend that I kind of knew from back home, just like couch surfing. And I would work at Bike Magazine until like 2 p.m. And then I would go drive up to Huntington Beach and go to Sheep Hills. And that's where I met all the BMX dudes. That's where I met Robbie Miranda. That's where I met Neil Wood. That's where I met Robbie Morales to some extent. That's where I met Chris Moeller. And I would like, shoot photos of the guys there. They weren't good, but if you go there enough, you're going to get some good photos,
Yeah, I mean, but you can't help it, right?
Yeah. And and so I ended up living with Robbie Miranda after I met him there.
Did you?
I didn't. Yeah.
Such a great guy too. Like that doesn't surprise me one bit. He is just a good person, like period. Yeah. Great guy. I mean, I need to get him on here as a matter of fact. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah. Might need 2 hours for that story, but we'll make it. So you're in Southern California, you're at Sheep Hills and you're shooting. Yeah. When did it start to pick up where you're starting to get clients?
So that happened. The internship lasted like 2 months, and they weren't going to hire me for any reason. I wasn't really great at anything that they didn't already have there.
Right.
But one of the guys that was in that magazine group, he worked for Powder. He was the editor of Powder Ski Magazine.
Wow.
And he would play ping pong at lunch. Like, as far as I remember, he was on some weird diet where he wouldn't eat lunch, and I didn't have any money, so I wouldn't eat lunch. So we would everybody would leave, and then he'd be like, want to play ping pong? And it was basically just him like beating me at ping pong. And then one day he's like, hey, you like BMX stuff, right? I work for Winter X Games, and my boss said they like need someone to do like BMX or like freestyle motocross, like to work on TV stuff. Like, would you want to do that? And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And so I got a job working for ESPN. First, it was Winter X Games, working with all the freestyle motocross guys. And I had my writing background, and it was basically like story production and research. So You've probably had people in that position call you if you raced any of the X Games kind of downhill stuff, just
to get, you have to get info, right? You
got info and just,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that was like me, but then we would work on kind of like other storylines for kind of like returning medalists and things like that. But
right.
Part of the job was here's here's a booklet with all the names and phone numbers and contact information for all the like top 50 athletes in freestyle motocross and BMX. And I got, you know, all those guys. And then I got like Dave Mira's phone number and Brian Foster's phone number and Crystal. Every fucking person. I had to call him for work. And then I'd see him in person at the trails, you know what I mean? If they'd come out and be like, oh, hey, we talked on the phone number for you, you know what I mean? And that was just like,
big network.
I got fast-tracked beyond belief. And so I had my job that was, you know, doing all the research, but I could kind of do that whenever I wanted. And then, you know, I'd go to all these events like the CFBs and doing research, and I'd bring my camera and I'd shoot photos and like submit them. And I was just sort of like, I kind of got into the industry in a really kind of like backdoor way, like through ESPN. I didn't have to like, it wasn't through a magazine where I had to like try to get a photo in an issue and then try to convince those guys to let me take a group of guys on a shoot or on a road trip. Like, yeah. And so anyway, and I was in Southern California and going to Sheep Hills and like eventually living with Robbie Miranda, and I'd shoot with him a lot. And then that got me some photos with DC Shoes, because Robbie was still on DC at the time. And then Robbie was good friend, Robbie was good friends with Dwayne Taylor, and that turned into some like Fox stuff, and then some DC stuff. After more DC stuff after Dwayne moved to DC, and then just the whole Southern California. You know, you're at a photo shoot, and then like two other pros show up, and then you get like a better photo of them than the guy you're shooting, and then you like, you know, sell that to like someone they're working for, and then
pretty incredible stuff. I mean, it's amazing how I always say good things happen to good people, and you're in the right place at the right point in time. Just chatting with people, being a good person, it works out, right? And that sounds like that's what happens with you as well, which is awesome because it's incredible stuff. So let's talk about how you are, I want to say transitioning back to video, because the first thing you did was a video. So you're now doing more directing and producing videos, which is awesome. And you're also, you know, stepping outside of the BMX world, or the extreme sports world, and you're shooting other more, I don't think, mainstream sports, or product photography. You got a lot going on still, man.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, which is great.
It's been great. You know, you look back, and 3 years ago, I couldn't like predict that this is kind of what I'd be doing. I'm very glad I'm doing it, but in hindsight, you know, you just got to be careful with the decisions you make, and be careful with the stuff you get good at, because you'll start to do it all the time. And I'm very happy with where I'm at now. I mean, the people I'm working for and the amount of work has been a blessing leading up to, you know, all the 2020 bullshit. Like I was trying to transition myself out of any event work with vans, and was able to do that. And then, you know, the pandemic happened, and my job wasn't to travel anywhere. Everything I was doing locally. I mean, one of my goals was to create more local business in San Diego and Carlsbad, because I didn't really work for anybody. I always had to get on a plane to go, you know, make money or like go travel, which is totally fine. But at some point you realize that you need to optimize that at some point. You know, like you can't, like that just doesn't work forever. And the things that get frustrating about your job for me were like linked to travel and linked to, you know, just producing shoots out of state, out of country. As fun as it is, it's just like, man, it'd be nice to like do a photo shoot and then like sleep in my own bed and then like do that every night, you know? So, actually I live like real next to a golf course that I shoot at all the time, which is like really funny. I don't even actually have to get on a road to get there. I'm like, I can drive in from where I'm at. And it was just like, seriously, be careful what you get good at, because like, anyway, so I work for I work for one golf company in particular, Cobra Puma Golf. My friend, at Red Bull in North Carolina, she got a job at this golf company after she left Red Bull, moved out here, and needed some video work on a Ricky Fowler still photography shoot. They needed just some behind the scenes video. I was able to come out and do some work for them. And they hadn't really integrated video into a lot of their production yet, unless it was like a specific TV shoot.
Sure.
So they really didn't have any in-house media production at all. And then it just ramped up over the last like 4 or 5 years. And yeah, they're primarily who I work with. So we have a lot of the shoe and apparel on the Puma side, and then the Cobra golf side is just like all hard goods. And they have like so many clubs and so many bags and just so many technology stories. There is like so much just work to be done that I'm so busy, and they're in Carlsbad. So yeah, I work with a
Even
lot of
better.
people over there. It's almost like they're like 4 or 5 clients to me, because I work with different people in different divisions, different budgets. So
Sure.
it's pretty cool how all that, like, that goal for me to optimize my business happened with them, because it is like one company, but it's a very optimized, like, kind of client group, so to
Right.
speak. But
I would
yeah,
think
so
that would make it easier for you as well, because then if it's one cohesive look that they're going
yeah,
for, they can play off of each other, which is really nice.
yeah, and they know what they're gonna get. I'm an easy person to call. Last minute things are easy to pull off. And one of the things that I hate the most, and I'm sure a lot of like independent producers, contractors, freelancers, they hate the onboarding process. Like, the referral to the, oh, let's plan a shoot, to let's, kind of like the, how's this guy? Is he cool? Is he gonna work with us? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, that just it you have to do it with every new client. But if you had to do it with every client for every shoot, you wouldn't get anything done, you
No,
know?
not at
So
all.
it's
It's
just
a
nice.
relationship, right? It's
Yeah.
you're trying to feel out the waters. Like, what's this person like? Like, what do we have to do here?
Yeah.
Can I sneeze in front of them? Right? I mean, there's all
Yeah.
kinds
Yeah.
of weird crap, right, that you have to deal with.
Yeah. And I'd kind of gotten to that point with Vans and Red Bull. And when that work kind of tapered off, it was nice to be able to kind of recreate that with a new group of people,
Hmm.
kind of get back to that level of just doing the work and focusing on the work and focusing on the quality of work, and not kind of like all the superficial shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Right. Well,
so
the one thing that I was blown away with was the photo session that you did with the Mardi Gras floats. Like,
hmm.
outstanding work, like amongst all the other stuff that you do. But that one, I was like, that's crazy. Like that, I can't. How does something like that come about? Like, how much creativity? Like that's like so crazy creative. I'm like, what? I never could never even think about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was a Red Bull video project, and it actually hasn't really been totally released since last year. It was, I don't know, I probably shouldn't
Well, we don't have to go into it too deep because I've never seen any footage of it except for your photos.
Yeah, it was like supposed to be in coordination with like a large event that
Hmm.
they're trying to get that event to come to that area. And they were kind of using Brock Rayford as their kind of marquee athlete to tie it to the city. And anyway, I don't know if that stuff is all kind of like finished business wise, but this was like a project to kick it off.
Yeah.
But it happened right before the pandemic. And then there was like some shit went down at Mardi Gras like later that week. And so I don't know what they're saving it for, but our photos my photos were released, and it was actually like Red Bull photography is its own kind of division within Red Bull. And so um, uh, they act as kind of like an agent for me, like booking me for shoots within Red Bull, but they also do like creative projects that are just like solely photography based. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I was able to kind
Amazing.
of use a different budget to shoot some stuff there and kind of do things that I normally wouldn't do. I had to shoot it how I'd normally shoot it, but we had the opportunity to kind of move a lot of things around and light it in different ways. And it was in like a warehouse that stores Mardi Gras, giant Mardi Gras sculptures.
Yes.
Yeah, and we just got
That's
to move them
amazing.
around, and it's like when it was like moving around monuments or statues at like a street spot that you would go to, because they were huge and they were like very graphic and very well defined. And it's like usually when you're at a shoot, you have to work around those.
Hmm.
And it's kind of funny because when you're at a street spot and you have stuff like that there, it kind of sets your parameters. So it kind of makes what you're doing a lot easier because it defines like a finite point. It's like, okay, we have to work with this or without it. Well,
Right.
in that warehouse, you kind of had infinite possibilities of, okay, what can we use? Where can we move it? Are there more things that we can do? And so you have to like really decide, okay, this is going here and it's staying here. We're not moving it. And then this is going here. And then I could have been shooting there for a week, you know? I mean, really,
Oh my gosh. Right.
I mean, we only got maybe an hour with him at the end of 2 days. There really wasn't much time. So I had a whole crew of people to help me move things around though. And my agent at Red Bull was there too. And he helped, he like did the interview kind of about it. And he kind of wrote a little bit of backstory about it, but he helped me,
Wow.
move some things around. But yeah, that was fun. I used a black Pro Mist filter on everything I shot. And so the haze that was in that room kind of had a little bit extra bloom to it. And I'd never really shot with one of those, but it made that highlight roll off a little bit softer in a really subtle way. Because there was already a lot of like dust and haze.
Sure. Of course.
In that warehouse.
Yeah.
But that was like maybe something I'd never done before, but that they kind of allowed me to do. Not that it would have really changed some things, but I was, you kind of got to pitch to them like what you're going to do. Right.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to sort of complement and enhance what's already there. That's kind of the idea,
Right.
So
fascinating way,
dreamy kind of look. Yeah.
It's fascinating that that's the way you have to approach it and sell it and pitch it. Like that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a lot of forethought going into the shoot where some people are just going to go, oh, let's go shoot. Like, I think the best photos come from having a plan. Here's what I think I want to get. Let's go try to get it. And whatever else we get while we're there, being flexible. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And adapting and
cool.
sort of just like recognizing opportunities that maybe didn't align with your plan, but something that's like achievable and complements what you're doing and that you can pull off, and it's going to be better than what you had planned on anyway.
Right.
Because the plan is like what gets you booked and gets you there. And then your ability to kind of like adapt and recognize some better opportunities is kind of what over delivering. That's when over delivering happens, when you use something that's like bigger and better than what you thought,
Right. When you get to places, and I know we're running out of time, I don't want to keep you too much longer. But when you go, are you bringing all of your equipment with you, all the lights and everything, or are you renting stuff when you get to your locations?
I try to bring as much of my own stuff as I can. We'll rent maybe C stands or a lot of the heavy stuff if we have time. I mean, that's I don't like to rent a lot of things because it means you have to show up a day before and spend time that I'd prefer to be scouting, or you have to like pay a PA to go pick all this stuff up. And I've done that enough times where you get equipment that's wrong, or it shows you get it and it's broken, or it's, you rent C stands and then they show up and they don't have like they don't have like arms on them. Sometimes some people rent them with and without, just little things like that. But so I try to bring as much of my own stuff, like if my bare essentials, if I had to do the shoot without all the other stuff I rented, like I could pull it off.
Right.
But yeah, mostly I brought all my stuff for that. I think I rented some things I didn't end up using, but just
for safety. You never know.
Safety, yeah.
So where are you going next? What's on the horizon for you?
That's a good question. I don't know where I'm going next. I'm probably gonna go see Adam Banton sooner than later.
Really?
Out in Arizona. I want to go ride out there while they're still kind of getting some rain, and their sandy mountain bike trails are pretty grippy. It's like prime time to go out there.
Yeah, you gotta go. My parents live out there. It's monsoon season. That's when you got to be there.
Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, I really don't have I don't really know what I have coming up. I know I have a bunch of work with Cobra. They're releasing a bunch of new clubs. I can't really say what they are, but
cool.
They're kind of like designed like cars. They look like cars, which would be fun to shoot. Because it's like you get to shoot a car, except you don't have to deal with all the bullshit of a car, where you have to take 30 minutes to get someone to turn it around. And anyway, yeah, it's
I
been
tried to
fun.
pick up a cable on a shoot one time, and I was hosting a show, and I'm like, I'll help you move that. And they're like, don't touch it. And I'm like, we appreciate you wanting to help. We really do. But if you do that, that means I don't have to be here. And I'm like, dude, I hear you loud and clear. I will never touch a thing again unless you ask me for help. Just know that I will help you. Okay. And he's like, dude, I appreciate it. And it makes a lot of sense. And you were saying that earlier, how so many people on set have their pieces that all make that motor work. And it's important to not step on toes, because otherwise that's a bad scene.
Yeah. We were shooting, my first car shoot was like a couple years ago with my friend Jeff. It was like for Honda, and he just like turned off the camera and like started walking away. I'm like, oh, what's going on? He's like, oh, they gotta turn the car around. It's gonna take 20 minutes, And so we just like went on a break, and I was just like, okay, I guess we're on a break for 20 minutes until like get the car turned around. And
so the driver shows up.
Yeah, the car prep team comes up. They like, back it out and then like back it in, and they jack it up and turn the wheels so the logos are at the right angles, and then they get out and buff it, and it's just it's
don't touch it. Don't even get in it. Don't touch it. Barely look at it.
Yeah.
Well, Justin, man, thank you so much for your time today. Your story is fantastic. I love to hear how people get started doing what they do, and clearly you're fantastic at what you do, and I wish you nothing but the best moving forward, man. This has been great.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. It was good to see you. And I'm going to watch I'm going to watch the Tony Donaldson one first.
Yeah, it's good. He's fun, man. He's an absolute ride, but make sure you go back and watch the Rick Moliterno one. One of my favorite ones that hasn't gotten a lot of play is, I totally forget his name now, but the one from the NASA employee. Why am I forgetting his name right?
I watched part of his. Yeah, I kind of had that on my phone a bunch.
He's the coolest dude. He was so great, and it's like 15 views. I'm like, someone needs to watch this. It's so good. Like, I love it. Plus, he's just a great guy, and I'm so mad right now that I can't remember his name. But regardless, thank you for your time today, man. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go hit some golf balls, and hey, the next time I'm in Southern California, let's get together and grab a coffee.
Hell yeah.
Sounds like a plan. Now, if you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, subscribe there as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys soon.